having Mitzi's favorite drink, a gin and tonic. Every time she'd come over to the house, she'd say, "I'm ready for my gin and tonic." And I'd get all night.
So you're telling us the secret to long life.
That's right.
Yep.
She did live to be 101.
That's right. So there must be something very medicinal about this. So let's start.
To Mitzi.
So I love that we can have just sort of a free-flowing little gathering of all the people that loved her great fan club that followed her along for all these many years. And we thought it would be catharsis, good juju for all of us to hear special little stories of how she made an impression on us in different ways. If you care to share a story about Mitzi, of some funny little memory, whatever occasion would come to mind, it'd be fun just to share that with us. And then we've been listening to Nelson Eddy, her crush all her life. Just the man of her dreams in the airwaves. And then we'll end it with some more of her other favorite music. We've got who is it? Anyway, so does anybody want to start a little story?
I'll start.
You start.
Yeah. It's been my pleasure for 11 years now to be her Uber driver. And Sharon's Uber driver.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
And our Uber driver.
That's right.
Many of us.
Many of us come to town, and that was always been my pleasure to take care of her. And even though last night I forgot my cell phone on the airport and almost missed Phil. But we got it done. But my story is the most memorable story I ever have in my life. Some of you might have already heard it. 3 days before she died, and she was going in and out as we talked to her. And Nancy would go every night, and Nancy said, "Mom, do you know who I am?" "Yes, I know, you're my daughter." And so I was stood up in front of the bed. She said, "What about this guy?" She looked at me and she said, "My man, William Fox." I mean, clear she had spoken in a week. And I'll never ever forget that. My man. My man. William Fox.
Yeah. So anyone else want to share something?
I will. If you help me stand up, I'll speak.
Or you can stay sitting.
You don't have to stand up.
I'm serious. Okay, I'm coming. My name's Ham Stockton, and I moved into the, it's sold 5 times while we lived there, but Mitzi and I had breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day that we could possibly have. And my driver, who I'm the luckiest guy in the world to have, I met because of Mitzi, which is really nice. It's nice to have a driver. Nothing like it. But my favorite story with Mitzi was, we, as I said, had breakfast, lunch, and I said, Mitzi, after about 2 weeks, you have one glaring personality. What is it? I said,
Liberal.
You're a damn Democrat. And I said, I am looking forward to being with you every day under one condition. If you and I get in an argument and we talk and get really mad at each other over something political, you have to come back to the next meal. And it worked. And I also said, Mitzi, I've never learned anything from anybody who thinks like I do. And I can promise you, if you're a Democrat, you do not think like I do. I learned a lot. It's a great thing to have known her, to have gotten a kiss on the cheek from her as many times as I could. And I'm glad to be here with all of us who shared that experience with her.
Cheers.
ass down. Hold that. Just open them out.
Would anyone else want to say something?
Yes,
Yes.
I do. Yeah, I'm Janet Sewell, for those of you who don't know. I'm married to Keith Sewell here, who was Mitzi. I was relatively new to this family because I was 38 years old when I married Keith, and that was 27 years ago, this June. And I first met Mitzi. The Sewells had a yearly,
I'd like it.
yeah, the Sewells, I mean, actually, mostly the Vegas. Yeah, it was
Get
Vegas.
together.
Had a beach get together every summer, and all the family got together, and all the kids. It was every year, and it was a week down on some isle, whatever. And the first time I went, and I met Mitzi, I have a penchant for taking things to events to involve people. And that particular year, I chose to take temporary tattoos. So I show up at this beach with a pile of like 50 of these huge, humongous, they're not small ones, they're huge, temporary tattoos. And I said, okay gang, we're all gonna put these on. Now of course the kids were like, they wanted them all over their body, so that was fine. But Mitzi walked up to me and she was in her bathing suit and she said to me, I want the one with the skull, the sword through his head, and the snake around it. And I want it right here. And I said, Mitzi, at your pleasure. So I put that tattoo right there for Mitzi, and she wore it until it wore off. Proudly. And Mitzi and I, since that day, were like this. And, we are soul sisters, and I don't know if I can go anymore because I'm going to cry. She was so special. And such a soulmate that welcomed me into this family that I miss her great.
Here.
A kindred soul.
So,
So, how about anybody else?
I can't let Republican get away with all this. I was a sole Democrat with Mitzi, and the same with my late wife. I was in that same assisted living facility, and I used to watch Ham and Mitzi having meals together. And for the life of me, I said all sorts of prayers in the hope that Mitzi would finally convert. However, she did not manage. We didn't manage, whatever the Republican. But this is a true story. Mitzi said, I'm getting old. She was about 98, 99.
Yeah, 98.
I'm getting old. And Scott, my grandson, says, Mitzi, you are going to live to over 100. How the hell am I going to live to over 100? I said, Mitzi, just understand one thing. 2020, Donald Trump is going to stand against a Democrat. You've got to effing live.
Yay, Mitzi!
So she lived through it. And she said, I'm going to see that Georgia turns blue. Mitzi, I'm with you all the way. Now, that was not the only story. There are so many stories about Mitzi. Some of you all may have heard them. Mitzi apparently, as a teenager, was in school somewhere, and she was returning from school past the boardwalk. I don't know which place in the United States. And she was in her school uniform. She was 13 or 14 years old. And she saw on the boardwalk a dance competition going on. And she decided to put her school bag down and go and enter the dance competition. And she won the damn dance. And the next day on the papers, on the front page, there was Mitzi doing this thing, showing her panties and winning the dance competition. And her father said, Mitzi, did you really go for this dance competition? She said, yes, Daddy, you're grounded.
Oh, I can
So,
remember.
Mitzi was a riot. I used to dance with her till the last day. I left that assisted living place after my wife died. And I would twirl her around and she would be as agile as any youngster, including her daughter.
That's right.
So Mitzi was an absolute riot. 99, I spoke to her just before Thanksgiving, last Thanksgiving, because I told her I now have a girlfriend. I'm going to come over to meet. She, yeah, let's do it. I said, I'll come over Christmas. My misfortune, Nancy's misfortune, that we didn't get together to meet Mitzi. But I've told her all the youngs. My grandson, who's now 9, going on 10, was called Mitzi's youngest boyfriend. He took to Mitzi when he was 5 years old. And every time his cousins also came down to the assisted living, he would take them, you must come to Mitzi's place. And I said, what the hell, this 5-year-old kid goes running up to Mitzi's door, knocks on the door, and open and Mitzi, and these are my cousins. And what did he want to show them? Opposite Mitzi's door, her room was 101, opposite Mitzi's door was a toilet which was for everybody to use. He said, it is the best toilet. And it's especially meant for Mitzi. So I remember so many stories about Mitzi. Anyway, to Mitzi, who I always
Anybody else? Yes, Brady.
Well done.
Yes. Big time Georgia Blue now.
Yes, refill our drink. Nice and good thing.
What will do with Mitzi?
We have to have a tall, long one.
All right, Brady.
I just wanted to say, I don't have really a funny story about her, but I'm her grandson, Brady. She was my Grand Mitzi my whole life. Nobody closer ever than my Grand Mitzi my entire life. And I want to say how proud I am that she's toughed it out. And it was a personal request that I had for years of her. Just hang in there. Every week I'd talk to her multiple times a week, a lot of times, and she'd be, oh, I'd ask how she's doing, and she'd always find something to be down about, and I'd always have something to try to cheer her up about. And we ended up always, you know, I love that she would have this attitude that we can disagree about something, but we still, at the end of the day, love each other, and the disagreements just don't really matter. It's okay. It doesn't matter. So, but I'm proud of her because, again, as a personal request, I wanted her to meet her great-granddaughter, and she toughed it out, and she was able to do that just a few months before the end. And I'm so happy that she was. To Mitzi and my granddaughter, my daughter, my great-granddaughter, Timothy, and she called Emmy lovingly, and holding her up and on her, what would be her deathbed, with a smile on her face. It was the most heartwarming thing in my life. Cheers.
I've known a lot of people, but he's hard to keep up with. He didn't stay put long. I followed your career, and it was
Did you? Well, it's good to meet you.
So anyone else have to say something?
Well, I'll you go. No, I can't do sibling.
Well, for me, because of her age, and again, I have a lot of memories of going to the beach and everything. She's very close to my grandmother, and she was the one that really organized us all going to the beach. And then not long after starting all that, Mitzi started coming because they were very good friends, and she would come to the beach. And quite honestly, after my grandmother passed, you know, Mitzi was, because she was from that generation and she remembered my grandmother, there was a lot of things that we could talk about from that was very healing for me, very, very soothing for me. And of course, the one thing that I think most of you know that she loved was bridge. I mean, that was her true one thing she loved, and I enjoyed playing with her tremendously. I would
Losing to her.
losing to her many times, but even in the last couple of years, even during right before COVID, when we were allowed to go, we would go over and take an afternoon with Sue and my dad when he was doing a little better, and we would play. It was great. And the thing about Mitzi and bridge was, there's a lot of analogies about bridge, and she would always bring some of these up. Look, you need to play the hand that's dealt. The play isn't always going to go the way you think it's going to go, and you have to be willing to adjust. And she had I can't do it justice, but she had a whole list of these that she would kind of remind you of as you're, playing bridge. And a lot of her things, she would just go, when it didn't go right, she would just go, oh, well. It was like, okay, they didn't quite go the way you wanted, but she's a very special lady, and I think the other thing that I'll always remember about her, and probably one of the things that I don't think I could ever live up to how she handled things, but it's a wonderful thing to try to shoot for is, aging with class and grace is very difficult. And being appreciative. And I just don't remember a time that I ever went to see her that she wasn't grateful about something, she wasn't thankful about something, she wasn't appreciative, and she always had a class that was just very unique. And as you age, and we all have challenges as we age and all that kind of stuff, I just hope that I know I have something that I can look at and aspire to. So, love you very much.
Cheers.
Okay. Scott, I need to interject one.
Please do.
Just because I have to follow that story. Because when I met Mitzi, I met her when Hank died, probably for the first time. We didn't spend a lot of time with her. But then when we went on a Greek cruise to take Hank's ashes, Mitzi was with us. And there's a group of us traveling together, and we met in Athens. We get on this boat, and here's this, Mitzi, this sweetheart in her purple and her matching clothes and her earrings, her very classy, genteel way. And one of the first things we had to do on the boat before we could go anywhere was you have to go to the lifeboat check. They make you go through all the stuff, and you got to stand in line and see where all the life jackets are and the lifeboats are. So we're in this line, and Mitzi's in line with me and Charlie. and the horn went off on the boat right above us, and Mitzi went really loud, and she looked at us and she went and that was that. That is how our friendship began.
On that cruise, Mitzi was famous for like 2 or 3 drinks at a time.
Well, she felt that was because she was my drinking buddy, because at happy hour it was 2 for 1 drink. So Mitzi and I always paired up, but yes, there was always a lineup in front of us because she wanted to try everything.
And we would push all of the drinks in front of her after we finished.
Say that's the truth.
I've never known her to be drunk.
Your drinking buddy who has never been drunk.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. Mitzi can carry that off.
That's the Southern lady in her.
Yes. All right, Scott.
Okay, I'm gonna say, I have about 15 things, so I gotta narrow it down. I've got a lump in my throat that's the size of a rock, and I'm clutching this like she's still alive. I look at us, we look ridiculous. The things you're supposed to do on a funeral are honor the legacy of the person that passed away, and I feel like we're all doing that. And I thought, I was journaling a lot this morning, and I thought about my first memory of her, which is hard to kind of go back in time to, but the first memory that I can really remember was being at her house on one of the weekends, and there was a big family gathering. All of her siblings gathered around in their patio. A lot of us are related through those siblings and through those marriages. And Mitzi, meant different things to everybody, but that vision of the gathering never left me. I see it right here. I as such a natural introvert, it's easy for me to kind of hide behind the wall, and so thankful to have somebody who was so sweet and caring and giving, that she was there for me and Brady from the start. And And so my mom, I can't thank you enough for everything, because you put this all together and you're honoring her more than anybody in this.
To Nancy.
And you had the responsibility of being the responsible mother, and she had the responsibility of being our friend. And so I feel, I've been saying this, I mean, she's not my only best friend, but she was my best friend. And I was lucky enough even to keep that going until she died. That now even 2020, I was seeing her about every other day just to go and say hi. And she was still growing and still learning even at that age. And she learned to get over her fear of cats with mine and Allison's cats. As if you would ever expect that to happen if you knew her. It's unheard of. So I miss her so much. I feel like a part of me is gone. I'm sure a part of you guys feel the same. And I think the lasting legacy that I get from her is that she made whoever was in front of her feel like the most special and interesting person in the world. And you kind of crave that. She was never about her. And I mean, in this day and age, who can even say that? This is more than anything a self-aggrandizement age. And to sit in front of her, Mitzi, was to feel listened to, cared for, loved. She was interested. She was always learning from whoever was in front of her, and so this is really special to have everybody here. I appreciate it.
All right. Who else would like to say? Philip?
I was going to make this kind of serious, but it's like Mitzi would love this.
Oh, she
Where
would
is
love
she?
this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, she would love this.
And so, and what Scott said, she was always listening, always attentive, and always loved what anybody had to say to her, and it didn't matter what it was. But that's a little more different. But anyway, she has a request, and this was, we promised her we would read this because it's been read at all her funerals. And I wanted to say, first of all, thanks everybody for all the efforts of everybody coming together to make this possible. And so that there's Nancy and William and Brady, Amanda and Empathy, and Scott and Allison really made the last 2 years of Mitzi's life a work that I could never do, but it was really, for her. And during the lockdown, Scott or somebody would stand outside the window and talk to her.
We would call each other on the phones, like walkie-talkies.
And anyway, the sad part about it was, I shouldn't get this sad, but we would talk to her from St. Paul 2 or 3 times a week, and when she couldn't hear us anymore, it was really terrible. So anyway, this is her request, and she had asked Paula to read this, so I'm going to have to read it for her. And it's from Ecclesiastes 3, and you'll recognize it as turn, but she wants it read, and she read it, Phil's great too. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. And I wrote a little thing here. It says, in the middle of World War II in 1942, Lieutenant Phil Nichols married Ms. Marion Sewell. And now, in 2022, 80 years later, Colonel Phil Nichols and Ms. Miriam Nichols will be together. So, and I wish to remember all the good times Nancy, Sharon, and I had growing up, and how much military shaped our lives. And our mother could be difficult, but she was the perfect officer's wife. And notwithstanding her friends and neighbors here, her loyalty to my father was immense. Could not be encroached upon or changed in any way. And she worked really hard to give her children a good life. And I miss our sharing of thoughts, because she took such pleasure in me telling her things. And now I speak for all of us when I say I'm really grateful to have known her.
Thank you.
Here, here.
I think that one thing was left out. Have y'all ever heard what is it when you leave? Be safe.
Be safe.
I got it every day of my life.
That's right, not finished yet. Anybody else want to say something?
So I am, well, I'm like the last person in this group to meet Mitzi. And so didn't know her long. But I'll tell you, this symbol of a feather is this. When a feather appears, a loved one is near. And all of you carry a piece of Mitzi with you. And you are so fortunate. She called me her last best friend. But she was extraordinary, as all of you have painted the picture. Sorry you didn't get to meet her, but you're seeing her here, evidenced by everyone in this group. And she was artful. I think that's the first, as I witnessed and have only seen all of you this first time. Artful is an extraordinary aesthetic of life. Aesthetics is the philosophy of beauty. And all of you are painting this extraordinary picture of a spirit that will live on. And her husband lived on with her every single day. The story of how she met him.
Oh, yeah.
How many of them don't know that? But we were able to capture the stories with the teenagers that I work with. And but I loved her story about how she slips her engagement ring.
And my mother took the phone call that when he called and wanted to talk to her about it.
Thank you all for sharing with me this moment and allowing me to share with you. Cheers.
Cheers. Okay, let's take I just want to say,
Stand up.
stand up. Let's hear about
I have to stand up.
Yeah.
I can only do it to the ones. My Aunt Missy was like my second mom. My mom had health issues when I was small, and I had this wonderful set of cousins that were two girls. And sorry, Phil, I don't think you came into the picture because I was a rambunctious little girl who needed girls to turn me down maybe. But I was always shipped off to Aunt Mitzi's when Mom would be in hospital or something, and she greeted me with, as you all know, just open arms and love and caring, and I always never minded that, I knew I'd be safe and happy and warm. And as I grew and the bonds became tighter and tighter between the families, and we all lived through so much together, she honored me as her grandchildren began to get married and go off on their own.
Oh.
To be her companion, to travel with her, to go to Colorado for Brady's wedding, and stay in the winery room, which we, slept in the winery of this marvelous home, and stay with her in Athens for Scott's wedding, and to come down and be with her when she was in rehab for a couple of weeks, and just visit with her. And she made me, as Scott said, feel very important in her world. And, I am just a niece who really gave her a handful as a young girl. But she loved me and she cherished me, and I will never, never forget that. And I hope I can pass it on.
Ma'am?
Okay.
So, we will continue our mom stories all into the afternoon, because all of us have so many good memories that we will never forget about her. The one thing I want to say before we leave, you know, Sue and I are great philosophical buddies that discuss everything in the world, and Sue and I have just discussed all that we could discuss about moms and children, and the most important legacy that we have to leave. And Mitzi was not ever someone who accomplished great things. She didn't have the educational degrees and pedigree of that. She didn't have a career. She never worked outside the home. She was not a great seamstress or painter or singer. And she often would say, you know, I really, compared to my sisters and compared to my friends, I have no talent. I have not accomplished any great things in my life. And yet none of those things matter when you are gone. Her greatest accomplishment was that every one of us felt that we were her favorite person in the world.
Absolutely.
Yes.
She was the best support and cheerleader and affirmative lover for everyone that ever met her. And it didn't matter if it was a small little JD on the day that she first met him and running around. He was absolutely the most wonderful little 2 or 3 year old she had ever met. And she just basked in the fact that everyone was her favorite person. And if you left being with her, you were surrounded by feeling that I'm pretty hot stuff. She really loves me. She just loved everyone. And we were all her best friend. And she was fascinated whenever anyone would call, and especially Brady and Scott, who, you know, are always running around the world and having all of their adventures. She, just as Brady said, she was never the one that had any judgment. The mom was full of judgment, but the grandmother was absolutely adoring, absolutely adoring. And isn't that just a wonderful thing that they're doing on any minute of the day? And she made all of us feel that way. And I think that in terms of legacies, that's the greatest gift anyone could leave, that we will not ever forget her. It doesn't matter about all of those other things. All right, so we do need to get this lady's ashes in the ground with her beloved husband. We all, the Phil stories would fill forever. And, but you know, we will have our last toast. You want to say something?
Her last quote.
We must say. All right, so this is so important, and then we'll go. So Scott and I were very privileged. It was wonderful that Scott could come home for the last 2 weeks of her life. And we would ask her all these questions, and it was this sense of urgency, like what my biggest fear is that after she was gone, there would be a question that I would think, why didn't I ask her? What have I missed? What's one more thing she could say to me? And Scott asked her, what last little bit of advice could you give me that you haven't already given? And
What can I ask you? What would you say? What would you leave me with if you were gone tomorrow? And she's inch by inch, it's a cinch.
Yard by yard, life is hard. Inch by inch, it's a cinch. We all know it. That is
All right, so we will wrap this up. This is our representative from this beautiful place.
On behalf of the Georgia National Cemetery and Marietta National Cemetery, I just want to share our condolences to you, your family, and friends that are gathered here today. If we have any veterans here today, thank you so much for your services. At this time, I'll take your loved one over to the gravesite that's over here. If you would like to, please follow me. and we can gather over there. Please clean up. We're really not supposed to have alcohol in the premises. However, please clean up, and we will also, after the services, we'll have to take the chairs out.
This was glad water.